This is my story, and it's all true. I was a dad who gave his family everything. I worked my tail off, I saved every penny, and I made damn sure they were never hungry or cold. I always thought when I got old, they'd take care of me just like I took care of them. But I couldn't have been more wrong. On Christmas Eve, my own flesh and blood drove me to a shelter and just left me there like a piece of trash. I really thought my life was over that night. Then one little thing in my pocket changed everything. But before I get to that, tell me where you're all watching from and what time it is for you. And please hit subscribe so more people can hear what happened to me. It was so cold that night, the kind of cold that hurts to breathe in. My son said he was taking me somewhere safe, and I believed him. I thought, hey, maybe it's a little surprise, maybe dinner or a trip to church. But the car didn't stop anywhere near town, or any place I knew. It pulled up to this old brick building with a flickering light and a sign that said, Community Shelter. He wouldn't even look me in the eye when I asked what we were doing here. He just pointed to the door. I just sat there confused, holding my little bag, waiting for him to say something, anything that made sense. But he didn't. He just said, we can't handle you anymore. Then he opened the trunk, grabbed my old coat, and tossed it right in my lap. The silence in that car was heavy. I got out real slow, still hoping this was just for a little while. But before I could even turn around, the car door slammed shut, and I just watched the headlights disappear into the night. I was standing there all alone, my breath making a cloud in the air, and the wind was just cutting right through my jacket. A man at the shelter door just looked at me, gave a little nod, and handed me a clipboard to sign in. He didn't say a word. It was just business as usual for him. I wrote down my name with a shaking hand, trying my best not to break down in front of a bunch of strangers. I never ever thought that after all those years of working, paying bills, the mortgage, all the hospital fees, that this would be my last stop. Dumped like a package nobody wanted. Inside, the place smelled like stale soup and bleach. People were just lying on cots wrapped up in these thin blankets. Some were talking low, and others were already out for the night. I found an empty cot over by the wall and just sat down. My hands were stiff from the cold, and I could still feel the engine of the car that brought me here. I wanted so bad to believe it was all a big misunderstanding, that they'd be back in the morning to get me, but deep down I knew they weren't coming back. Families don't just accidentally drop you off at a shelter on Christmas Eve. As I was lying there, I just kept thinking about all the years I spent raising them. All the early mornings, working double shifts the Christmas mornings. I'd stay up all night wrapping their gifts just so they'd wake up with a smile. I gave them every single thing I had, my time, my money, my love. I never asked for anything back, and this is the thanks I get. They told me there was no more room in the house I built with my own 2 hands, the house I paid off, the same house where I used to carry them up to bed when they were too little to walk. Then outside I could hear carolers singing somewhere. The sound was faint, but it felt like it was making fun of me. I remembered when we used to sing those songs together. My wife, God rest her soul, she loved Christmas more than anything. She would have been so ashamed of what her children had become. I rolled over on the cot and tried to get some sleep, but the cold metal frame was just digging into my back. I just stared up at the ceiling, counting the cracks, just trying to keep my heart from breaking into a million pieces. Then one of the volunteers walked by. She handed me a little cup of coffee. It was lukewarm, but it felt like the nicest thing anyone had done for me all week. I just nodded thanks. I couldn't talk. Words felt way too small for this kind of hurt. Around me, people were snoring, coughing, whispering in their sleep. Some were praying quietly. I didn't pray. Not that night. I just closed my eyes and made myself one promise. That if I ever got out of this shelter, I would never ever depend on anyone again. Not my son. Not a single relative, nobody. I was going to find a way to get back on my feet, even if it took every last bit of strength I had. I had no idea how, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't the end for me. The first thing I felt the next morning wasn't the cold. It was shame. The kind that sits on your chest like a rock and won't budge. When I opened my eyes, the shelter lights were still low. They were serving breakfast, paper plates, watery oatmeal, and burnt coffee. People lined up quietly, with their heads down. I got in line trying to disappear, but I could feel them looking at me. Some were curious. Others just looked tired. It didn't matter. I didn't belong here, and they all knew it. I used to walk into restaurants where people treated me with respect. Now here I was in a charity line, waiting for food like a beggar. I sat down with my tray and just stared at it. My hands were shaking. I wasn't hungry, but I made myself eat. Pride doesn't fill an empty stomach. Across the room, an old man was talking to himself, mumbling about how his kids forgot him too. A woman was wiping her eyes, looking at a worn-out photo in her hand. I realized I wasn't the only one who'd been thrown out by their family. The world outside talks a big game about kindness, but in here you see the truth. People only love you when you're useful. My coat was thin, the same one I'd had for years. The zipper was busted. The pockets were torn. I could still smell my house on it, just barely. The wood polish, the laundry soap, the warmth of a place that wasn't mine anymore. I rubbed my hands together to stay warm, but it didn't do any good. I wanted to go outside, but where would I go? The shelter had a rule. You could leave, but you couldn't get back in after dark unless you signed up all over again. I had nowhere else to be, so I stayed put. When I looked out the window, snow was falling. I could see them so clearly in my house, my son by the fireplace, his wife smiling, the tree all lit up in the corner. They were probably opening gifts, eating dinner, just pretending I never existed. I bet they were telling people I was staying somewhere comfortable. People like them always lie to make themselves look good. They wouldn't say they dumped me here because I was too slow or too much of a burden. They sure wouldn't say they left me on Christmas Eve with nothing but a small bag and my old shoes. Later that day, some volunteers came in handing out donated coats and socks. One of them smiled at me and asked if I needed anything. I wanted to say, a home, but I just nodded and took what she gave me. The coat was 2 sizes too big, but it was warm. That one small act of kindness felt bigger than anything my own family had done for me in years. It hit me then that strangers had more humanity than the people I raised. I went back to my cot after dinner. The noise in the room got louder. People were laughing, some were playing cards, others were just talking about their lives. I didn't join them. I couldn't. I just lay there staring at the ceiling again, listening to the noise. Just the sounds of other people's pain. My whole life came crashing down in less than 24 hours. 1 minute, I was home planning what I was going to buy my grandkids. The next, I'm here. Like I don't even exist. That's how quick love fades when it's just for convenience. Before I tried to get some sleep, I stuck my hand in my pocket. I felt that crumpled lottery ticket I'd bought earlier in the week. I'd completely forgotten about it. It was just a quick pick, something I'd done for years, not because I believed in luck or anything. It just gave me a tiny bit of hope. I held it in my hand that night, just staring at the numbers. It was just a piece of paper back then, completely worthless. But it was mine. It was the only thing I had left that they hadn't, clears throat, taken from me. I put it back in my pocket, shut my eyes, and just whispered to myself that maybe, just maybe, things would change. That's the night the pain started in my chest. It wasn't sharp, just heavy, like something was pressing down on me and wouldn't let go. I couldn't tell if it was my heart or the weight of what they'd done to me. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw their faces, my son, his wife, my grandkids, all of them smiling as they drove away. I tried to tell myself they'd be back, that maybe they'd realize what they'd done, but morning came and nobody showed up. Just another cold sunrise through the shelter's dirty windows. I sat up real slow, pulling my coat tighter around me. My hands were swollen from the cold. The coffee they gave us was watery and bitter, but I drank it anyway. I couldn't stop thinking about Christmas mornings from years ago. The smell of pancakes, the sound of tearing open presents, the laughter that filled my house. My house. Now they had it all decorated, warm and full of lights. They were probably sitting around the same table where I used to carve the turkey. I built that home with my own 2 hands, and now it was filled with people who couldn't even spare me a bed for one night. The other men at the shelter started talking about their own families. One guy said his daughter stopped calling right after she got married. Another said his sons only visit when they want money. I realized I wasn't alone in this. There's a special kind of pain that comes from your own flesh and blood turning cold. It doesn't kill you fast. It just drains the life out of you little by little. I didn't say much. I just listened. Every guy in there had his own story, but the ending was always the same. Forgotten parents, broken promises, and empty homes. When the snow finally stopped, I went outside just to breathe. The sky was gray. The ground was wet, but it felt better than being stuck inside. I walked a few blocks real slow because my knees were stiff. The streets were quiet. All the stores were closed. Everyone was home celebrating. I passed a bakery where I always used to buy cakes for my kids. I just stood outside staring at the cakes in the window. I remembered all the times I'd surprised them with treats after work. I could almost hear their little voices, hear them laughing. A memory like that should have made me feel warm. Instead, it hurt more than anything else. I sat down on a bench in front of a closed shop. My chest felt even tighter. I pressed my hand against it and tried to take deep breaths. I wasn't scared of dying. I was scared of dying and being forgotten. The thought that nobody would even care that I was gone. That was harder to take than the cold. For the first time in my life, I wondered what all those years of hard work were even for. You raise kids thinking they'll carry your love forward, but sometimes they just carry away your money. When the shelter and a volunteer van pulled up offering rides, so I got in. She asked if I was okay. I just nodded. What was the point of explaining? People feel sorry for old guys in shelters, but they have no clue what betrayal really feels like. It's not about being broke. It's about being tossed out by the very people you built your life for. Back inside, I laid on my cot and just stared up at the ceiling again. I felt that little slip of paper in my pocket, the lottery ticket. I pulled it out, unfolded it, and looked at the numbers. I almost laughed. How ironic is that? A broke old man holding a piece of paper that promised something better. Something that could never happen. I didn't believe in luck anymore, but I still held on to it, maybe not for hope, but just to remember. It reminded me that even little things can change when you least expect it. I closed my eyes that night thinking about one thing. I might have lost everything, but I wasn't dead yet. Tomorrow could still be different. That little piece of paper in my pocket was the only thing I had left that was actually mine. I'd bought it 2 days before Christmas when I was still at home. My son had sent me to the corner store to get some groceries. I had a few bucks left over, and without thinking, I bought one lottery ticket. Just one. It wasn't a plan or some big dream. It was just a habit. For years, I'd buy one ticket every week, scratch it, and throw it out. I never won more than a couple of dollars. But this time, for some reason, I didn't toss it. I folded it up neat and slipped it into my coat pocket. I totally forgot about it until that night in the shelter. When I reached into my pocket and felt that thin paper, it was like holding a piece of my old life. Something small, something mine. I pulled it out, looked at the numbers, and gave a bitter smile. The ink was a little smudged from my wet gloves. I almost threw it away right then, but something made me stop. Maybe it was pride, maybe I'm just stubborn, or maybe it was just that I had nothing else left to lose. I slid it back into my pocket and told myself I'd check it in the morning. The other guys around me were talking about getting back on their feet after the holidays. Some were waiting for jobs to open back up. Others were just hoping their family would call. I didn't join in. I'd already accepted my family wasn't going to call. Not tomorrow, not ever. But that little ticket was burning a hole in my pocket all night. It wasn't about the money. It was about what it stood for. A chance, no matter how small, that my story wasn't over yet. When they killed the lights in the shelter, I lay awake just staring into the dark. The sound of the wind outside mixed with the snoring of the men around me. I thought about the life I used to have. The noise, the laughter, even the arguments, the smell of dinner cooking. Now all I had was silence and one piece of paper that was probably worthless. But still I couldn't throw it away. I held it in my hand like it was the only real thing left. Early the next morning, before anyone else was up, I sat by the old TV in the dining hall. It was a small, fuzzy screen tuned to the morning news. The air smelled like burnt coffee and bleach. I didn't expect anything. I just wanted something to look at. I unfolded the ticket again and looked at the numbers. 4, 12, 19, 27, 33, and 48. I repeated them in my head a few times like a prayer I didn't believe in. Then I waited for the announcer to read the winning numbers. As I sat there, I thought about the talk about ironic. I'm sitting in a shelter with a useless ticket while my family's in my warm house. They've probably forgotten I even exist. I rubbed my hands together for warmth and just stared at the TV. The news was on. The anchors were all smiles talking about holiday winners and miracles. It all sounded so fake, like some kind of bad joke, the kind that wasn't funny. But when the lottery part came on, my heart jumped. They started reading the numbers, one by one. 412, 1927, 33, 48. I blinked and looked at my ticket again. Every number matched, every last one. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I looked again, real careful, shaking so hard I almost ripped the ticket. It still matched. I just stood there frozen, staring at the screen. The ticket I almost threw out. The one I bought with my last few bucks. The one I forgot about in my coat pocket. It was worth $5 million. But I didn't jump. I didn't scream. I just sat back down, slow, and laughed to myself. Not because I was happy, but because I couldn't believe it. It was just this quiet feeling that karma has a funny way of settling scores. When I woke up on Christmas morning, I didn't expect things to be any different. Same old smell of coffee, same sound of feet shuffling, same tired faces waiting for breakfast. But the small TV in the dining hall was already on, playing the morning news. I sat down at one of the plastic tables, holding my crumpled ticket. My hands were shaking from the cold. I slowly unfolded the things, trying to smooth it out. I didn't think it was worth anything. Probably just another loser like all the others. Still, I gave it one last look before I tossed it. The TV was all bright colors and happy voices. The news anchors were smiling, going on about Christmas miracles and good luck. Then the lottery segment started. I almost looked away, but when they started calling out the winning numbers, I just froze, one by one. Each number matched mine: 412, 1927, 3348. My heart started pounding so loud I couldn't even hear the TV anymore. I checked it again and then a third time. Every single number was there. I blinked hard, thinking it had to be a mistake. I rubbed my eyes, pointing closer to the screen, and held the ticket right up to my face, but it was real. The announcer said, "It again. The jackpot was $5 million. The whole shelter went quiet when I stood up clutching that ticket, in both hands. A few people turned to look at me. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I just stared at the TV. As the world just blurred around me, a volunteer came over and asked if I was okay. I nodded, but tears started rolling down my face. Before I even knew it. Not because I was sad, but because I was in shock. I had nothing. No family, no home, not even a good pair of shoes. And now, just like that, I had $5 million sitting in my coat pocket. It didn't feel real. It felt like some kind of twisted reward. Or maybe a punishment. I couldn't tell. The staff helped me call the lottery office. I read them the numbers one by one, just waiting for them to say it was a mistake. But every number was right. I was the only winner. They told me to come down to the local office to verify it. The people at the shelter started cheering. Some of them clapped. One guy patted me on the shoulder and said I was that year's Christmas miracle. I didn't know what to say. By the time I left the shelter that morning, the news cameras were already outside. Reporters were waiting. It all happened so fast. The story blew up. Some guy gets dumped at a homeless shelter on Christmas Eve and wins the lottery the very next morning. Everyone wanted pictures, my story, my reaction. I didn't have any nice clothes or clean shoes. I was still wearing the same coat my family threw me out in, but I walked into that lottery office with my head up. I didn't need a fancy suit. The truth was all I had. When a reporter asked how I felt, I didn't mention luck. I talked about being thrown away. I told them I was left at a shelter less than 12 hours before I found out I won. The entire room went dead silent for a second. They recorded everything: my face, my name, the whole story. By the time I walked out of there, the whole world knew who I was. I barely smiled. People probably thought I'd be jumping up and down, celebrating. But I wasn't thinking about the cash. I was thinking about that car door slamming in my face the night before. About the people who left me in the cold, the sound of them laughing as they drove away. They thought they were rid of me. But I guess fate had other plans. Cameras were all over me when I left. Reporters were yelling questions. Flashes were going off everywhere and people were clapping. They called me the Christmas miracle. Some people even cried when they heard my story. I didn't cry. I just stood there holding that giant check they gave me still in my torn coat and busted shoes. The coat smelled like the shelter. My shoes had holes in them. I didn't want to change out of them. I wanted everyone to see exactly what my family tossed aside. They asked if I had anyone to call. I told them no. They asked if I had a message for my family. I didn't say a single word. I didn't have to. The cameras said it all. By noon, my face was on every TV in the state. My name was all over the internet. The guy left in the cold was now holding $5 million. Every picture, every word, every news story just made the truth louder. I wasn't the broken one. They were. The people at the shelter hugged me before I left. Some of them were crying. These folks who had nothing were actually happy for me. That meant more than the money. Strangers showed me more kindness in a few hours than my own family had in years. I took some pictures with them before I left. I promised I'd be back, and I meant it. When I got to the parking lot, reporters kept asking what I was going to do first. One guy offered to buy me new clothes. Another one offered a ride to a hotel. I said no to both. I wasn't looking for comfort just yet. I wanted the world to see the real story, not some cleaned-up version. I wanted people to remember exactly how I looked when my own family ditched me. Because that's the real story. When I finally got to a hotel later that day, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. It was the one the shelter gave me. Unknown numbers, news stations, talk shows, people trying to give me money advice. I just turned it off. I sat on the hotel bed and watched the news. My face was all over the screen. The news anchor said, "A local man left by his family gets a Christmas miracle." I just sat there, quiet, staring at the TV. And then I saw it. A live shot of my old neighborhood, my house, my family's house. The same one they kicked me out of. A reporter was standing right there in the driveway, and behind her I saw them. My son, his wife, my grandkids, all standing in the window. Their faces were white eyes wide, watching me on TV. The whole world knew. By then, everybody knew. The neighbors, their coworkers, all the people they'd been showing off to, everyone knew. I can only imagine what was going through their minds. Regret, shame, maybe even fear. They threw me out just to make their lives easier. And now, the old guy they left on the curb was a front-page story. They probably couldn't even leave the house, not without people whispering behind their backs. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt calm. Sometimes life just takes care of things for you. You don't have to lift a finger. Later that night, the phone rang again. I just let it go to voicemail. I knew exactly who it was. I didn't need to hear their voices. It'd just be a bunch of apologies, excuses, and lies. I didn't need to hear any of it. The world was already saying it all for me. That night, I slept in a real bed for the first time in years. Warm sheets, a quiet room. But even with all that, I couldn't make myself smile. I just laid there staring at the ceiling, thinking about the last 24 hours. From a cot in a shelter to a hotel room that costs more than my old house. That's when I realized revenge isn't always loud and angry. Sometimes it's quiet. It just sort of happens. By the next morning, my story was on every single local news channel. My face was everywhere, newspapers, TV, the front page of every news website. The headline was always the same: old man left by family wins $5 million lottery. They just kept repeating it. All the details were there. My name, my age, the name of the shelter. They even named the small town where my son lives. News vans were parked right outside his house. Reporters were all over the sidewalk asking neighbors what they thought. And trust me, the neighbors had plenty to say. They called it heartless, cruel, just plain disgusting. Everyone on that street knew the truth about my family now. They tried to hide it first, closed the curtains, kept the lights off, but the news trucks weren't going anywhere. People started stopping on their front lawn, taking pictures and whispering. Somebody even put a sign on their fence that just said, "Shame." My son's wife called the news station trying to claim it was all a big misunderstanding. She said they didn't abandon me, that they just couldn't give me the proper care I needed. But it was way too late for that. Nobody was buying it. The pictures told the real story. There I was in a shelter while they were at home celebrating Christmas. I just sat there in my hotel room watching it all play out on TV. I didn't feel proud. It didn't feel like I'd gotten revenge. I just felt quiet. Everything they tried to hide was out in the open for everyone to see. Every single person they'd ever lied to could see their smiling faces on TV right next to the man they'd left out in the cold. I didn't have to do a thing. Karma hit them faster and harder than I ever could have. My phone was ringing off the hook. Producers from the big national shows wanted to interview me. Banks were calling to help me manage the money. Even people from my old job called to congratulate me. It felt like everyone wanted a piece of me, but the only people who needed to pay attention were already living in their own personal nightmare. My family. I didn't answer their calls. I didn't text them back. I just let them sit there and stew in it, while the whole world judged them. By lunchtime, their pictures were all over the internet. Someone had dug up old photos from their social media. You know, family vacations, fancy dinners, all of them smiling. And the comments underneath were just brutal. People were calling them ungrateful, heartless, greedy. You name it. Every happy post they'd ever made just made them look like bigger liars. Their perfect little family image was completely destroyed in one day. The same pride that made them kick me out was now burning their entire life to the ground. I knew they'd be watching TV all day. They couldn't get away from it. Every time they flipped the channel, there I was, the old man they tossed out. Every time they checked their phones, another story popped up, another headline, another reminder. They built their whole world on pretending to be good people, and now everyone knew the truth. The next morning, my son tried talking to the reporters outside. He said he was really sorry for what happened, but the cameras didn't care that he was sorry. They just saw a guy trying to fix something that was already broken. When he showed up at work, his boss told him to go home. The company didn't want any part of it. My daughter-in-law stopped going out at all. My grandkids went silent online. In less than 48 hours, their whole world got flipped upside down. It wasn't because of what I said. It was because of what they did. I just stayed quiet. I didn't do any interviews. I didn't post a single thing. My silence was what really got to them. They couldn't twist my words because I wasn't saying anything. Every headline told the whole story. Everyone watching could see exactly who they were. For years, they made me out to be the old burden. But now the world saw the truth. They weren't taking care of me. They were just cowards. That night, I turned off the TV and just sat by the window in my hotel room. It was snowing again, just like that night they left me. But this time, I wasn't cold, I wasn't hungry, and I definitely wasn't forgotten. The same snow that fell on me outside that shelter was now falling outside my window. It was like the world was quietly wiping away everything they did to me. By the third day, my phone would not stop ringing. I was getting calls from everyone. Reporters, bank's old neighbors, relatives I hadn't heard from in years, and finally, my family. At first, I just ignored any number I didn't recognize, but then I saw it. My son's number lighting up the screen. I just stared at it for a minute. It was the same number he used to call me from when he needed money, or advice, or some kind of favor. But he was calling for something else now. I just let it ring. 5 minutes later, it rang again. This time it was his wife, then my granddaughter. Again and again. I didn't pick up a single call. They started leaving voicemails, one after another. Some were quiet, some were desperate. They all said they made a huge mistake. They said they were worried about me. They said they never meant to leave me there. Each message sounded more panicked than the one before, but their words didn't hurt me. Not anymore. I already heard the truth in the sound of that car door slamming shut. I didn't need any apologies that only came after the whole world turned on them. They weren't sorry because they cared about me. They were sorry because everyone saw what they did. But one message made me stop. It was my son's voice, quieter than I'd ever heard it. He said the neighbors weren't talking to them anymore. His boss told him to stay home until this all blew over. His wife's parents were humiliated. The kids were getting picked on online. He said he couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't even step outside without cameras in his face. For just a second, I almost felt bad for him. And then I remembered how easily he left me in that parking lot on Christmas Eve, just standing there alone in the snow, the same silence he gave me that night. I was giving back to him now. The calls kept coming all evening. They were begging me to come home to fix this mess together, to tell everyone the truth. But the truth didn't need to be fixed. It was already on every TV in the country. The old man they left out in the cold was a millionaire now. And they were the bad guys. I didn't make it that way. They did. All I did was exist long enough for everyone to see. By day 4, they sounded different. The begging stopped and the anger started. I heard my son yelling in a message that the money belonged to all of us, that I was embarrassing the family. He said I was making people hate them. I had to laugh at that. He just didn't get it. I didn't have to turn anyone against them. They did that all by themselves when they chose to be cruel instead of kind. That night when I was walking through the hotel lobby, one of the guys working there stopped me. He had tears in his eyes. He said, "You remind me of my dad." Then he hugged me before I could even say anything. That one hug from a total stranger meant more to me than anything my family ever did. For years, I'd begged for love from people who just saw me as a burden. Now I didn't have to beg for anything. Respect just came on its own once people knew the truth. After that, I turned my phone off for good. I didn't need to hear from them again. They had their chance. They had years of chances to be kind. I gave them everything. A house, an education, a stable life, and my trust. All they had to do was be there for me when I got old, but they traded me for an easier life. And that easy life was the first thing the world took away. While they were hiding in their house, I was sitting by my window, watching the snow fall over the city. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't even smiling. I was just free. The pain that was always inside me was finally gone. There was just peace. The silence used to feel so heavy, but now it was a relief. I knew they would spend the rest of their lives wishing they could take that night back. But life doesn't give you second chances for being cruel. It just gives you consequences. Their downfall didn't happen all at once. It was slow, one embarrassing thing after another. The story was everywhere. Every news channel, every website, all over social media. Family ditches dad on Christmas Eve. Next day, he wins $5 million. People couldn't stop talking about it. My son's name wasn't out there at first. But the internet finds what it's looking for pretty fast. Within a week, his full name, his address, and pictures from his social media were all over the place. His coworkers saw it, his boss saw it, his clients saw it. Everyone knew. He just stopped going to work after that. His company put out a statement saying they didn't approve of what he did. They didn't officially fire him. They just stopped giving him any work until he quit himself. His wife tried to do damage control online. She wrote these long posts saying the media twisted the story, that they didn't mean to hurt me, but nobody bought it. People just replied with screenshots from my interview. They pointed out the dates, the pictures, the police report that showed she and my son dropped me at the shelter. The more she tried to defend herself, the worse it got for them. Eventually, she deleted all their accounts, but the screenshots were already out there. The internet never forgets. Then the neighbors started acting different. They stopped waving. Some would cross the street to avoid them. Their kids stopped playing with my grandkids. Everyone knew them as that family. The shame didn't just go away, it got worse every time they went outside. The local paper even ran a headline calling it a lesson in karma. My son just couldn't take it. He started drinking a lot. His wife left and went to stay with her parents for a bit. The house that used to be so full of laughter just went silent, into silence. The bills started piling up. With no jobs and no savings, they had to sell their stuff. Furniture, jewelry, the second car. Every week something new was gone from that house. I knew because reporters kept giving me updates. They'd ask if I wanted to say anything. I never did. There was nothing left to say. Everything they did was just them dealing with the mess they made. Eventually, the house went up for sale. The same house they threw me out of. The one I built with my own 2 hands. They tried to cover it up, saying they were downsizing. But everybody knew the real story. Nobody wanted to buy it either. People said it had a bad feeling. They said it was cursed. Maybe it was. Or maybe the house wasn't the curse. Maybe it was the greed that was living inside it. By spring, they were in a small apartment on the other side of town. No more big dinners, no more guests. My son started working part-time at a hardware store. His wife got a job cleaning offices. It wasn't about the money, though. That's not what broke them. It was losing everyone's respect. People stopped trusting them. Even their own family wanted nothing to do with them. They couldn't get away from what they'd done because it was everywhere. Every Christmas, their names would pop right back up on the news. Every single year, the same reminder. I didn't visit. I didn't send a single message. I didn't have to. The world was doing my work for me. It's a funny kind of justice that happens without you saying a word. When the truth gets too heavy for the lies to hold up. They laughed when they left me in that parking lot, thinking I'd just fade away. Instead, they became the ones people whispered about. One reporter told me they were trying to start over, maybe even get out of town. But I knew better. You can't run from guilt. You can change your address, but you can't change your name. Wherever they went, that story was going to follow. They didn't just lose money. They lost their dignity. They didn't lose comfort. They lost their peace of mind. And every time they saw a story about me helping shelters, donating food-building homes for people with nowhere left to go, they had to live with the fact that the man they left for dead was doing better than they ever could. Their punishment wasn't being poor. It was watching me rebuild the life they destroyed. When all the noise finally went away, peace showed up. It was quiet. No cameras, no interviews, no reporters, just quiet mornings and long walks by the ocean. I bought a small house that looked out over the water. Nothing fancy, just clean and warm. The kind of place where being quiet feels safe, not lonely. The air smelled like salt. The waves just crashed against the rocks, steady and slow. And every morning I'd sit on the porch with my coffee just thinking about how things turned out. I wasn't angry anymore. That anger had burned out a long time ago, way before the money came. What was left was something stronger. Clarity. I learned that real peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from letting stuff go. I didn't buy any fancy cars or jewelry. I didn't chase headlines or try to show off. I spent my money on things that actually meant something. The first thing I did was go right back to the shelter. I didn't tell them who I was at first. I just walked in, sat down, and listened. Some of the same guys were still there. Men who'd been forgotten by their own families. Women still fighting just to make it. I knew their pain. I had lived it. When they figured out who I was, some cried, some smiled, some just shook my hand. I made sure every single one of them got new beds, hot meals, and clean clothes. I paid for the shelter's heat for the entire winter. That place gave me a place to live when I had nowhere else. I wanted that place to last. So I started a little fund for seniors who were all alone. I did it quietly. No press, no cameras, no big deal. I just wanted to make sure nobody would ever have to feel as cold and alone as I did that Christmas Eve. I helped build wheelchair ramps. I fixed leaky roofs, and I paid hospital bills for people I'd never even met. It didn't make me some hero. It just made me feel human again. Helping people gave me back that part of me my family tried to crush. Every now and then, my name would pop up on the news, just small stories about a donation here, a good deed there. I'm sure my family saw it. Maybe they watched it on a small TV in that cramped apartment they ended up in. I bet they shut the TV off the second my face showed up. I didn't care. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. They'd already gotten what they deserved because of what they did. I forgave them, but just for myself. Not because they asked for it, but because I had to move on. Holding on to hate just keeps you chained to the people who hurt you. Letting it go. That's how you get free. I never called them. Never went to see them. I didn't need to look them in the eye to know they regretted it. That kind of regret isn't easy to hide. It's in the quiet that comes after you do something terrible. I knew they'd think of me every single Christmas. I knew they'd remember that night and everything they lost, and that was enough for me. Now, every December, I put up just one wreath on my door. I make a simple dinner for myself, nothing fancy. I just sit by the fire and watch the firelight dance on the wall. And I smile, not because of the money, but because I survived. I actually made it through the kind of thing that breaks people, and I came out of it stronger than I'd ever been. Every year, I send a big donation to shelters all over the state, but I never use my family's name. I sign it with my own. The name that they tried so hard to forget, the name the world will remember. Here's the thing. They left me out in the cold on Christmas Eve, thinking I'd just vanish. But the next morning, my face was on every TV in the country. Not as some charity case, but as the man who turned things around. They threw me out like trash, but life, well, it proved I was something more.